This testimony isn't just another story. It's one of those rare journeys that challenges everything you thought you knew and opens your heart to something greater. Beloved, lean in and watch closely. In every moment of this testimony, you'll see the unstoppable love of Jesus breaking down false beliefs and leading to the true freedom our souls are longing for. I still remember the sound of the evening call to prayer echoing through the dusty streets of Muguri the day everything changed. The sky was orange and smoky, and the wind carried the smell of roasted corn from the corner of the road. My sisters, Fatima and Rama, were sitting outside, laughing about something I can't even remember now. Then, suddenly, the laughter turned into screams. The ground shook beneath us. A bomb had gone off not far from where Father worked. I was only 11 then, but I knew something terrible had happened. We ran. I don't know how my legs carried me through the thick dust and shouting people. When we reached the market, all I saw were broken stalls, fire, and people crying. Mother was already there, calling Father's name over and over. The next time I saw him, he was lying on the ground, still and covered with a torn piece of cloth. My world went quiet. That night, our house was full of people, but I could hear only silence in my heart. Mother sat still in the corner, her hands trembling, her eyes wide open. Fatima tried to comfort her, but Mother didn't move. Days turned into weeks, and she hardly spoke. She stopped eating, stopped smiling, and sometimes she just stared at the wall like she was watching something far away. I didn't understand what was happening, but I knew our lives had lost something we would never find again. Father's death broke something in her, and little by little, it felt like it broke us too. We prayed the only way we knew, kneeling on our mats, whispering for peace. But peace never came. Only the sound of silence and sorrow filled our nights. And one morning, Mother didn't wake up at all. The doctors said it was a coma. I didn't know what that meant. All I knew was that her eyes were closed, her breathing slow, and she couldn't hear us. They said it could be days or months, or maybe never. I remember crying so hard that my chest hurt. Fatima tried to be strong, but I saw her tears too. Rama was too young to understand. She kept asking when Mama would wake up. That's how the silence began. A silence that lasted for 4 long years. The hospital became our second home. The nurses knew us by name, and the smell of medicine and disinfectant became part of our lives. Every morning before school, Fatima and I took turns cleaning Mother's face, brushing her hair, and reading to her. We didn't know if she could hear us, but we talked anyway, about the weather, our school, even the funny things Rama said. At first, the doctors gave us hope. They said maybe she would wake up soon, maybe her body just needed rest. But as months passed, hope turned into a whisper that no one dared speak. People stopped visiting. Even some family members told us to let go and move on. But how could we move on when her bed was still warm, her hands still soft, her heart still beating beneath the machines? Fatima was the strongest. She worked small jobs after school, washing clothes, helping at the market, just to pay the hospital bills. I helped too when I could, though sometimes I wanted to give up. Rama grew quieter every day. She stopped playing outside and started sitting by Mother's bed, whispering things to her like she was talking to a sleeping friend. We prayed every night. Sometimes we prayed to God to bring her back, and sometimes, when we were too tired, we prayed just to survive another day. The nurses would come and go, most of them rushing, others avoiding our eyes. But there was one who was different, Nurse Ruth. Ruth always smiled. Her voice was soft, and when she cleaned Mother's wounds, she did it like she was caring for her own mother. Sometimes she sang while she worked, songs I didn't know then. They were gentle, peaceful, and somehow made the hospital feel less like a place of sorrow. I once asked her why she sang so much, and she smiled and said it helped her feel closer to God. I didn't understand what she meant, but her words stayed in my heart. She didn't preach or argue like others. She just loved quietly, helped when she could, and prayed in whispers I couldn't hear. For years passed like a slow rain. Every day looked like the one before. Fatima finished secondary school but refused to leave home for university because she couldn't bear to leave mother. I grew older but not happier. The world outside moved on, but inside the hospital room, time stood still. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering if God had forgotten us. I asked why he let father die and why he let mother sleep so long. I wanted to believe he cared, but everything felt dark and cold. Then, one evening, something unusual happened. Something that began to stir the silence that had wrapped around our lives for years. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to be part of this journey. Our community is growing, and it's filled with people who, like you, are searching for truth and hope. As you listen to this powerful testimony of transformation, we'd love for you to be part of the conversation. Share where you're watching from and what stands out to you in this journey. Your thoughts and reflections aren't just comments. They help shape a genuine dialogue around experiences that have the power to change lives. That evening felt different from the start. The air was heavy with the smell of rain, and the hospital lights flickered as thunder rolled far away. I sat beside mother's bed, watching her chest rise and fall beneath the thin blanket. Fatima was talking to the doctor in the hallway about our bills, and Rama was curled up asleep in the corner. Then I heard it again, that quiet singing. It was Ruth. Her voice floated softly through the corridor, calm and steady, like a river that refused to stop flowing no matter how dry the land became. She didn't know I was listening. She sang while cleaning the next room, humming words I couldn't understand, but I could feel the peace in them. When she came into our room, she smiled at me like she always did. "You're still here, little one," she said kindly. I nodded, wiping my eyes quickly so she wouldn't see I had been crying. She checked the machines, adjusted mother's blanket, and then stood silently for a moment, looking down at her. There was something deep in her eyes, something I hadn't seen before. It wasn't just pity or sadness. It was like she was listening to something inside her heart. After a while, she bent down and touched mother's hand. I thought she was about to whisper something, but she didn't speak right away. Instead, she closed her eyes, and her lips moved in silence. I didn't know it then, but she was praying. Later that night, when most of the lights were off and everyone had gone quiet, I saw Ruth come back. She looked nervous, glancing down the hall before stepping inside. Fatima had fallen asleep beside mother's bed, and Rama was still in the corner. Ruth stood there for a long moment, breathing deeply like someone trying to gather courage. Then she knelt by mother's bed and rested her hand gently on mother's arm. Her voice trembled a little as she whispered, not loudly but enough for me to hear faintly through the still air. I couldn't make out all her words, but I caught some words that sounded like she was calling for light, life, and healing. She mentioned the name of Jesus, softly and with such certainty that it made me shiver. At first, I was afraid. We had been told to stay away from that name, that it belonged to people different from us. But there was something about the way she said it, not with argument or pride, but with love and tears in her eyes. When she finished, she stayed kneeling, as if waiting. The machines beside mother stayed the same, beeping slowly, their rhythm like a tired heartbeat. I didn't say anything, just watched. Then suddenly, one of the monitors beeped louder. Then again. Then faster. I thought it was breaking down, but Ruth gasped and looked at mother's face. Her eyelids fluttered. I jumped up, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. Fatima woke up and rushed to mother's side. Rama started crying. The doctors ran in. In the middle of the confusion, I saw something I would never forget. Mother's eyes slowly opening, blinking at the bright light above her bed. Her lips moved weakly, and though her voice was faint, I heard her say one thing, something that made everyone freeze. She whispered the same name Ruth had spoken, Jesus. The moment Mother opened her eyes, the whole room went wild. Nurses shouted for the doctor, the machines beeped faster, and Fatima just stood frozen, covering her mouth with both hands. I remember Rama crying loudly, calling, "Mama, Mama," as if her voice could hold her there. I couldn't move at first. I just stared. I had dreamed of that moment for years, prayed for it, begged for it, but when it happened, it didn't feel real. Mother's eyes blinked against the light, her lips trembling as she tried to speak again. The doctor came running, checking the machines and shining a torch into her eyes. His hands shook slightly. "She's conscious," he whispered in disbelief. "She's really awake." I saw Ruth standing at the back of the room. Her hands were folded, her head bowed. She didn't speak. She didn't even move when the doctor called for help. I could tell she was praying again, quietly, like she was thanking someone only she could see. When the chaos settled, Mother's eyes found me. They were weak and watery, but they were alive. She looked around the room like someone waking from a long dream. Her gaze stopped on Ruth, and for a moment, everything went still. Tears filled Mother's eyes, and though her voice was soft and cracked, I heard her say it clearly enough to make my knees weak. She said that Jesus had healed her. The room fell silent. Even the doctor froze mid-step. I didn't know what to feel. A strange fear gripped me. Fatima's face went pale. Rama looked confused, clutching my arm. Mother tried to sit up, but her body was still weak. She looked around as if searching for something unseen, whispering softly in gratitude. Ruth stood there with tears running down her cheeks. Then, without saying a word, she quietly left the room. Later, when the doctors left and the lights dimmed, we gathered around Mother's bed. She was breathing more easily now, her color returning. I wanted to ask what she meant, why she said that name, but I was too afraid. That night, we didn't sleep. Fatima kept watch, her eyes filled with worry. Rama lay beside me, whispering questions I couldn't answer. I could still hear Mother's voice in my head, those words echoing again and again, "Jesus healed me." At first, I thought maybe she was confused. Maybe it was just something she imagined after being asleep so long. But deep inside, something had shifted. The silence that had held our lives for years was broken, and I didn't know what to do with the sound that replaced it. The next morning, the hospital was buzzing with news. People came to see her, whispering among themselves, calling it a miracle. Some said it was luck. Others said it was impossible. But I knew what I saw, a woman who had slept for 4 years now breathing, speaking, and smiling again. Mother held my hand and told me she had seen light, bright and gentle, and that she felt a love beyond words. She said she heard a voice that called her by name and told her to return because her children were waiting. She couldn't explain it, and I couldn't understand it. But I knew she believed it with her whole heart. That was the day everything began to change, not just for her, but for all of us. In the days that followed, our house was full again, not with mourners this time, but with people curious to see the woman who had come back. Some came to celebrate, others came to question. Even some local religious leaders visited, trying to understand what had happened. Mother told them she had seen light and heard a voice calling her name. She spoke softly with peace in her eyes, but every time she mentioned Jesus, the room tensed. Some people frowned, others whispered, and a few walked out angrily. Fatima begged her to stop talking about it. She was scared that people might think we had turned away from our faith. Mother didn't argue. She only smiled and said that love was not something she could hide. But inside I was terrified. I didn't know how to explain what had happened, and I didn't understand it either. I wanted to believe her, but part of me was afraid to. That night, after everyone had gone, the 3 of us sat quietly around Mother's bed. The lamp flickered, and the air was still. Fatima asked softly, "Mama, are you sure you're not just dreaming? Maybe it was the medicine?" Mother shook her head slowly, her eyes fixed on something invisible. She said she had been in darkness for a long time, floating between silence and pain. But then she felt hands lifting her, warm and gentle, and a voice told her she was loved. When she spoke, something in her tone made me tremble. It wasn't just her words, it was the peace that surrounded them. That night, after everyone fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I couldn't stop thinking about what she said. I whispered the name to myself, afraid someone might hear me. Jesus, It felt strange on my tongue, but it also felt alive. Sometime during the night I fell asleep, and then it happened. I found myself standing in a bright field. Everything around me glowed with golden light. The sky was endless and calm. Then I saw a man walking toward me. He was dressed in white, his steps slow and steady. His face shone softly, and though I couldn't see it clearly, I felt no fear, only peace. When he reached me, he lifted his hands. I saw marks, deep and shining, in the middle of his palms. They glowed like stars. I couldn't speak, but I understood. He didn't say words the way we do, but I heard him inside my heart. He let me know that he loved me, that he had been near even in my darkest nights. I woke up with tears streaming down my face. My chest felt light, like a burden had fallen away. I wanted to tell someone, but I didn't know how. In the morning, Rama looked pale and quiet. When I asked if she was okay, she said she had seen a man in white in her dream too. Later that day, Fatima confessed the same thing. We looked at each other, speechless. None of us understood what was happening, but deep down I knew we had all seen the same man. The one with scars in his hands. That was when the fear began to turn into something else, something that felt like truth. After that night, something inside our home shifted. The air no longer felt heavy with sorrow. Mother's smile returned, faint at first, but steady. She no longer needed the machines to breathe. Her body was stronger than anyone expected. Fatima and I began to notice small changes too. We laughed more, argued less, and even Rama seemed lighter, as if a shadow had lifted from her tiny shoulders. Mother began to move slowly through the hospital halls again, greeting other patients with a gentle smile. She didn't tell everyone what had happened, but she prayed quietly for those who were sick. Some people would laugh, others would look confused, but then strange things began to happen. I watched, wide-eyed, as patients who had lain in beds for months suddenly sat up. A woman's fever broke without medicine, a man's pain eased as Mother laid her hand on him, whispering prayers I couldn't hear. At first, we were scared. Fatima warned us to keep quiet. People will think this is strange, she said. They might even turn against us. But we couldn't hide what we saw. Every day, more miracles seemed to follow Mother's gentle steps. Even at home, our prayers changed. We no longer whispered out of fear. We prayed boldly, speaking honestly to God. I felt my heart opening in ways I didn't understand before. The fear that had clung to me for 4 long years began to melt away. I remember one evening sitting by Mother's bed while she rested. I was afraid to ask, but I couldn't help it. Mama, did he really heal you? She opened her eyes slowly, looking at me with a softness I had never seen before. She let me know, through a gentle look and her trembling hand on mine, that it was true. That love and power had touched her, and it was not from us, but from someone greater, someone who had never left us even in the long years of silence. From that day on, I noticed a change inside myself. I wanted to be closer to him, the one we had all seen in our dreams. I wanted to understand his love and follow it. Every time I whispered his name, it felt alive in my chest. Even Fatima, who had always been cautious, began to pray quietly at night. Rama would sometimes hum the songs Ruth had sung, and I could see her little heart being drawn into the same light we had all glimpsed. We didn't know what the future would hold. People still whispered and stared. Some of the hospital's staff avoided us, whispering about what was happening. But we didn't care. Our home, our hearts, and our prayers had changed forever. The gentle change was not loud or dramatic. It was slow, steady, and quiet, like water carving a path through stone. But it was real, and it was unstoppable. It didn't happen all at once. Faith doesn't usually arrive like lightning. It comes quietly, slowly, like seeds being planted in soil that was once dry. After Mother's healing, I realized we had to choose whether we would accept what we had seen or pretend it never happened. I remember sitting alone one afternoon, my knees drawn up to my chest, staring at the sunlight on the floor. I felt him in that light, gentle and patient, waiting for me to take the first step. He revealed to me in my heart that he had never left us, even in the long years of pain and sorrow. He let me know that he had carried Mother, that he had protected us in ways we could not see, and that now it was time to follow him. The first night I knelt and prayed alone, it was difficult. My hands trembled. My voice shook. But I felt a warmth that made the tears run down my face. I realized I was speaking to someone who knew me, who knew my sadness, my fear, and even my small doubts. I felt seen. I felt loved. That night, Fatima and Rama came to me quietly. We didn't need to speak. In our hearts, we knew we had all seen the same man, and now we were beginning to trust him. The dreams had shown us the scars in his hands, marks of sacrifice and love, and they could not be ignored. Mother encouraged us gently. She didn't force us or shout. She simply let us know, in soft words and small gestures, that the love we had felt in those dreams and in her healing was real. She let us feel it for ourselves. Slowly, we began to pray as a family. Every evening, we would gather beside Mother's bed. Our whispers became louder. Our hearts became lighter. Even Rama, who had been so afraid for so long, started praying with the certainty of a child who knows love is true. One day, Mother walked through the hospital corridors again. I followed, hesitant but curious, as she stopped at each bed and placed her hand gently on the patient's, whispering words of hope. I watched as a man's hand, stiff from illness, moved for the first time in months. I saw a woman smile through tears, freed from a pain she had carried silently. I wanted to run to her, to touch her hand, to feel that same power. And I did. But when I looked up, I realized it wasn't Mother who had healed them. It was the love she carried inside, the love of the one who had awakened her from the long silence. That was the first step for me, the moment I truly understood that faith is more than seeing miracles. Faith is trusting, even when we don't fully understand, and choosing to walk forward, hand in hand with the one who has always loved us. After Mother returned to full health, the world around us seemed to shift in ways we couldn't control. People began to notice her presence, the calm she carried, the quiet power of her prayers. It started small, at the hospital and in our neighborhood. A child who could not walk for years took steps again after Mother laid her hand on him. An elderly woman's trembling hands stilled, and her smile returned. I watched all of this with wide eyes, still learning how to believe it myself. At first, it was frightening. Could this be real? Could this really be happening? Some days I wanted to hide, to keep our secret to ourselves. Fatima warned me again, but Mother only shook her head. She let me know that love cannot be hidden, that it spreads naturally, quietly, and without our control. The miracles were not loud or flashy. They were gentle, like a ripple spreading across still water. Every person Mother prayed for, every heart she touched, seemed to awaken in its own way. And with every healing, I felt my own faith grow stronger. One afternoon, I saw Ruth again. She smiled at me and whispered something only I could hear. She let me know that I had a choice, to continue walking in fear, or to step into the life he had prepared for me. I wanted to shout yes, but I could only nod. Inside, I felt the warmth of his presence wrapping around me, steady and real. Mother began to teach us how to pray with power and love, how to trust him in every moment. She encouraged Fatima, Rama, and me to read his words, to study them quietly, and to memorize the promises that had carried her through the long years of silence. I felt something I had never felt before, a connection not just to Mother, but to God himself. People began calling her the healer, but she always refused the title. She let me know that it was never her power, but the power of the one who had healed her. Every hand she touched, every prayer she whispered, was filled with that same love and mercy. I remember standing beside her one evening as the sun set over the city. The light spilled into the room, golden and soft, and I felt the same presence I had seen in my dream, the one with scars on his hands. He revealed to me again, in that quiet moment, that love is stronger than death, stronger than fear, and stronger than silence. From that day, I began to see faith differently. It wasn't just about praying for miracles or asking for help. It was about letting love flow through us, trusting Him even when the world doubts, and carrying hope to those who have none. Even Rama, little as she was, began to share the songs Ruth had sung. We sang them together, our voices trembling at first, then growing confident. The hospital halls felt lighter. The people who came to see Mother began to believe in something beyond themselves. A love that heals, a faith that cannot be broken. We learned that miracles are not always in the grand gestures. They are in the ripples, the small changes, the quiet acts of love, the courage to keep praying when everything seems lost. And slowly, our world began to change, one heart at a time. By now, I had begun to understand something I could never have explained before. Faith was not only about seeing miracles, it was about trusting with every part of my heart. I felt it in the way my chest lifted when I whispered His name, in the way my hands trembled when I prayed, and in the quiet moments when I alone could feel His presence. One day, I watched Mother walk through the hospital again. She paused at every bed, touching hands, whispering prayers, offering smiles that seemed to carry warmth inside them. I followed quietly, unsure what to do, but knowing I wanted to be part of it. And then I felt it, a warmth, like a hand resting on my shoulder, guiding me. He revealed to me that love and mercy are not only to be received but also to be given. I knelt beside a young boy whose leg had been weak for months. My heart shook as I whispered prayers, repeating the words I had learned from Mother and Ruth. The fear in my chest pressed hard, but I felt him near, letting me know I was not alone. The boy's hand twitched slightly, then moved again. I gasped, my tears falling silently, and I realized that miracles do not always happen in loud moments. Sometimes, they happen quietly, in faith and in love. That night, I told my sisters about the dream again, the one with the man in white and the scars on his hands. They shared their dreams too. In that moment, I understood that each of us had been touched in a way that could never be taken away. Faith had reached into our hearts and made us brave, made us willing to follow, even when the world seemed afraid. I felt my heart swell with gratitude. I wanted to tell everyone, not about the miracles only, but about the love that had carried us through 4 years of silence and fear. I wanted to tell them that God had not forgotten us, that He had seen our tears, and that He had answered our prayers in ways beyond understanding. Mother whispered to us again that night, as we held hands and prayed together, that our lives were meant to be a testimony. A story not of fear, but of faith. A story not of despair, but of hope. And in that moment, I realized that faith is strongest when shared, when carried in hearts willing to love, to forgive, and to serve. We began to tell our story slowly, to anyone who would listen. Some laughed, some doubted, some left, but others listened and knelt, and we saw hearts being opened. And in the telling, our own faith grew stronger. I began to see that miracles were only part of the story. The real testimony was the change in our hearts, the courage to believe, the willingness to forgive, and the readiness to love even when the world seemed dark. We learned that faith is alive, not in words alone, but in actions, in prayers, and in the love we carry to those around us. Now, as I sit beside Mother and watch Fatima and Rama pray, I understand something I couldn't as a little girl. Faith is not a single moment or miracle. It is a journey. It is waking up each day with trust in God, even when life is uncertain. It is loving one another, even when it is hard. It is speaking hope into the darkness, even when no one seems to listen. Our lives will never be the same as they were before the bomb, before the long years of silence, before Mother's coma. But that is not sorrowful anymore. Instead, it is a reminder of what God can do when we are faithful and open to His love. We have learned that miracles are not only in healing bodies, but in changing hearts. They are in forgiveness, in mercy, in the courage to continue even when fear wants to hold us back. I feel him close to me every day now. He lets me know that my prayers matter, that my tears matter, that my love matters. He reveals to me that the same care he gave to Mother, the same healing he gave to our family, is available to anyone who seeks him. And I believe it, with all my heart, with all my soul, and with every trembling step I take in faith. I want to tell anyone who will hear, do not be afraid to pray. Do not be afraid to love. Do not be afraid to follow him, even when the world doubts. Read his word. Study it carefully. Let it guide you. Pray for yourself, pray for your family, pray for those who are lost and hurting. And love one another, even when it seems impossible. I want to remind myself every day that the journey with God is not always easy. Sometimes it will be long, and sometimes it will feel silent. But even in the silence, he is there. Even in the darkness, his love shines. And even when our hearts are broken, he can heal, restore, and fill us with hope. Mother now walks with purpose, helping others, praying for them, sharing the love that saved her. Fatima and I follow, learning every day, teaching Rama, and growing together. And I know that if we stay faithful, if we trust him, and if we love one another, our lives will continue to be a testimony of his mercy and grace. So I encourage everyone reading this, never give up on prayer, never give up on hope, and never give up on love. God is patient, he is faithful, and he is always ready to walk with you, even when the road seems impossible. And as you walk with him, remember to share his love, care for those in need, and let your heart be a living testimony of his power. Because faith is not just about what we see. Faith is about who we become when we trust him, when we love, and when we let his light shine through us, even in the darkest places. And this is our story, the story of 4 years of silence, a mother awakened, and 3 daughters learning to walk in faith, hope, and love, guided always by the one who has scars in his hands and a heart full of mercy.